the biggest overreaction you've ever seen? Story 1. I parked in my ex-boyfriend's driveway to spend the night with him at his lake house. Huge driveway, 3-car garage, plenty of space. I parked at the end of the driveway, so anyone could get into or out of the garage if they needed to. His sister came over super early in the morning, think 5:30 a.m., to retrieve a pair of shoes she had left there. She got angry that I was parked in her space. She punched a wall, destroyed my cell phone and purse, threw my shoes into the lake, then slit my boyfriend's cheek and chest with a butcher knife when he came downstairs to see what the racket was about. I was hiding under the bed while she destroyed the house and assaulted him. Cops were called. She got into her car and drove off, only to go back to her own apartment and attempt suicide. Once they stabilized her after the OD, her mother, his stepmother, had the gall to call me screaming that her daughter wouldn't have overdosed if I had just parked in a different spot. It was surreal. Story 2. On a trip to Hawaii, we took the road to Hana Gorge's scenic drive through the coastal rainforest and stopped at a roadside stand in a remote area where a local family was selling banana bread. There was a young couple in line ahead of us, probably on their honeymoon, the woman in a skin-tight dress and full makeup. She ordered a banana bread and then asked the young girl if they sold Perrier. The girl kindly replied that they did not sell any sparkling water, just banana bread. The woman flipped her and asked, "Well, can you give me a discount?" Meanwhile, the husband looks like he wants to flee the scene, and the girl smiled and coolly replied, "I can give you a high five, or a hug." Story 3. I was working as a cashier at a shitty retail chain, let's call it K-, which was closing. Shocker, I know, policy when a store is under liquidation is no coupons. There was another K across town, so local papers would have their coupons. Of course, then, I had to regularly deny coupons when people would try to double up. Apparently 75 off toilet paper wasn't good enough. They needed the extra 30 off and couldn't see why we wouldn't allow this. Anyway, I denied a coupon from a college professor I was taking a class with the next semester. We chatted about the upcoming class and were getting along until she handed me the coupon and I said, "I'm sorry, we can't accept coupons during liquidation. You can use it at our store on the other side of town though." She kinda just stared at me and I swear her I twitched. She was like, "Oh well, I never shop at stores like this, so could you just accept it?" I clipped it specifically for this trip. After a couple more back and forth routines and my manager backing me up, she kinda just frowned at me and glared, swiped her card, and legitimately stomped out of the store. I kinda just shrugged, assumed it was because of the heat or something, and carried on. Fast forward to our class together. She somehow managed to forget to call my name every single week. Papers would get lost, emails would never be responded until the last possible minute. Somehow the random order in which we chose our final projects ended up with me choosing last, and of course, she didn't approve of my first 3 options because she just doesn't like them. And of course, she lost my final essay for a couple weeks, so my grade was an F for a few weeks until I filed a report with the dean and she magically found it and gave me a B. Still bitter, it was a coupon. At age 12, on a family vacation in Thailand, I saw a bus driver rear-end a police car in traffic. We're talking the tiniest imaginable collision. It barely made contact and couldn't possibly have caused any actual damage. The cop got out of his car with his gun drawn, got on the bus, and put the barrel to the driver's head. Held my breath for what felt like a minute while I waited to see if I was about to see a stranger's brains get blown out for no good reason. Finally the cop settled for holstering the gun and beating the driver unconscious with his fists instead. Story 4. I broke up with a girl. In reality, we hadn't been dating in over a year, but she still found a way to keep me hanging on just enough to be her own personal lost puppy. I finally told her no contact. She promptly got absolutely faced, threw a rock through my bathroom window, slashed her wrists, and got taken to the hospital in cuffs by the police. Then she was back. She escaped from a hospital not 20 minutes later and ran back to my apartment completely naked, with a hospital gown thrown over her shoulder, so that was a wild ride. Story 5. Lived with my aunt for a few months while I was saving for an apartment. We were watching Jeopardy one night, and a question about a British colony that wound up vanishing mysteriously came up. She instantly yelled out Jamestown. I said, in what I'm still sure was a polite tone, "If they're talking about the one that disappeared, I think they're looking for Roanoke actually." She scoffed. Then when the correct answer of Roanoke popped up, she threw the remote down, went, "Well, you must think I'm pretty stupid, huh?" and stormed out of the room. Refused to speak with me for like 3 days. Story 6. When I was 12, I got home from school to find all the contents of my bedroom that could be thrown out of the window in the front yard. Why? Because my mother had found socks in the underwear drawer or the other way around and thought this was unacceptable. Interesting childhood. Edit. I hadn't suspected things like this were so widespread, but maybe they are, or maybe they are selection bias for those on Reddit. My mother had anger issues stemming from an abusive childhood of her own. She is still with us, in her 80s now, and is a lot calmer, and we know how to handle her better. My dad has been married to her for 50 years, but he had issues too. Story 7. I saw a grown man curse a teenage girl working at Jack in the Box over the size of the chicken nuggets in the kids' meal he ordered. He said they're the size of rat turds. Story 8. Once I was on my way home from work, got a phone call from my sister. She was hysterical. It took me good 5 minutes just to calm her down. I was obviously freaking out trying to figure out what had happened. Long story short, she ordered a pizza and they sent her one wrong topping. Story 9. Related to a comment further down. My mom was in a relationship with an abusive who had a hair-trigger temperament. One day I went to the kitchen to get some water. I had left the TV in the living room in because it's a 30-second trip at most. Comes charging and shouting that I'm wasting electricity and tells me to turn it off. I remarked that turning it on and off would take up more power than leaving it on. He lost his, started throwing things, screaming at me, etc. Told my mom that I needed to go. It ended with him threatening me with a wooden roller, a dough roller. I baked to cope with the stress of living with him, and my mom sided with him. She told me that she didn't love me, I was a waste of space, etc. All over a TV that was on for 30 seconds. 3.5-year-old son, getting ready for bed. He had happily changed into his pajamas, brushed his teeth, and put his toys away, preparing for sleepy bye, when I told him to climb into bed and I would tuck him in. Absolute ape in an instant, immediate hot tears streaming down his face, hiccuping with complete fury at the thought of having to sleep, as if the first 3 things we had done had nothing at all to do with bedtime. Me, exhausted and confused, looked at him and said, "Dude, I'm going to sleep too, so is your mother, so are the dogs. You sleep every night, it's not that big of a deal, just go to bed." It was like I flipped a switch that he couldn't find in his head. Oh okay D, and that was it. Climbed into bed, fell asleep. Had not happened before this night. Has not happened since. Nuclear meltdown over bedtime. WTF. Story 10. Took my husband and children 3 to my mother's for Thanksgiving. We hadn't seen her in a year because my husband's schedule, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer and going through treatment. Anyway, the night before Thanksgiving her husband fell asleep in his chair with the TV on. She went to grab the remote to turn the television off, and he kicked his foot up, almost kicking her in the face and yelling at her for turning the TV off when he was watching it. He thought it was funny. She told him that she didn't appreciate that behavior, especially in front of her grandkids, and walked off. We went to our room for the situation to cool off. Come out 20 minutes later to find that he put anything that was ours in a black garbage bag, breaking multiple things in the process and telling me how I need to respect his home since we are visitors. All of our things were neatly put out of the way. I told him he needs to respect my mother. My husband came out yelling at him, and we ended up packing up and leaving within 30 minutes, all because she took the remote when he was sleeping. Honestly, he probably wasn't thrilled we were visiting in the first place, but he can write off. Story 11. My mom walked into my room while I was almost done cleaning, looked at my almost clean desk, and threw everything on the ground, breaking some of my things and screaming at me for having such a disgusting room. She's usually super sweet, but she was having a terrible day, and my room had looked a bit messy for 2 weeks since I was working 2 manual labor jobs and was almost never home. I basically got home, showered, and passed out, then got up early in the morning to leave, but at that point I was finally getting to my room. So needless to say, I simply walked out the door and went to a friend's house until she called me and apologized for going off on me for no good reason. Even my dad was on my side, and he's never on my side. Story 12. Grade 4. I bring my binder up to the teacher's desk to show her my homework. Can't remember what it was. She looks at it for a few seconds and suddenly picks the binder up and heaves it across the classroom without a word. It lands with a thud and a crack as it tears, and the rings pop all out of alignment. I was stunned. All I could do was go pick up my binder and sit down again. Told my parents that night when they asked how was your day at school, and they had the school put me in another class for the year. In the grand scheme of things, that's not too terrible. Plus bonus, this teacher was a big fan of country music and made all the kids practice square line dancing throughout the year for a year-end concert. Where I'm from, that's embarrassing, so at least I got out of doing that. Story 13. My friend once got into the car crying hysterically after I picked her up from work. She wouldn't talk to me and would just scream, get angry if I asked what happened. After about 30 minutes of coaxing, she told me they fired her for stealing. This is the girl who worked at a deli and bragged about stealing upwards of $200 a day from them, thinking they wouldn't notice. Story 14. My oldest sister was coming to visit for the first time since ID moved to a bigger city. It was Lansing, but compared to the one stoplight town we'd grown up in, it was bigger. ID given her explicit directions, including visual checkpoints such as if you've passed the 3rd BK, you've gone too far, but this was simply not enough. We got a phone call pre-cell phone days and she was screaming and crying. Every question of what happened, or where are you, was met with a wail of I don't know, and we finally had her put on a worker from the restaurant shed called from. He gave us the location and I had to send Mai to go rescue her and lead her back to our place. The cause of the panic, a 1-block detour due to road construction. It was clearly labeled, easy to navigate, and did I mention it was 1 block? This grown woman lost her from a 1-block detour, and the world ended until someone came to take her by the hand to drive the additional 10 blocks to our apartment. And then there was the time only once, we took her Black Friday shopping. Ugh, never again. Edit few. Just got back and saw the questions. My other sister and I always went Black Friday shopping together. It was a well-coordinated attack on the retailers to find the best deals and get our Christmas shopping done in one fell swoop. Our older sister decided she'd had enough of hearing about the fun times we had. We did walkie-talkies, made new friends. It was a blast, and told us she was joining us 1 year. We tried to tell her, we really did, Black Friday was not for her or her ahem delicate sensibilities, meaning all focus was to be on the NPD sister at all times. She wouldn't listen and decided she needed to be a part of this tradition. Well, okay then, we got up at 3 a.m. and the adventure began. She bitched about the early hour, she bitched about the line waiting to get in, she bitched about the cold it's basically it was a non-stop fest. We finally see the doors about to open and get ready with the rest of the people. It's go time. The flood of people rush into the store and my sister, that traitor, took off so fast I swear she left smoke. which left me with NPD's sister frantically clutching me while I tried to navigate the crowds. At some point she let go, but I figured she'd put on her big girl pants and realized it's not that big of a deal. Nope. While in line to put items in layaway, another strategy so we didn't have to haul things out to the truck, but could pick them up in a week when it was less crazy. I hear my name on the overhead page. Evilish, your party is waiting at the front of the store. WH. I look over and see other sister also in line. She shrugs, then asks where NPD sister's at. I'm not getting out of line, neither is other sister. Now the overhead page is calling for other sister. Then a few minutes later, it's back to me. This store was laid out in a square formation. No twisty-turny corridors of confusion. Literally just a giant square. Very easy to navigate. Well, we finally finished up and made our way to the front to find NPD's sister clutching the arm of a store employee and sobbing. This poor kid was so happy to peel her off and give her over. Apparently she had lost me. Had her heel clipped by someone attacking her with a Carter version. And she found a store employee and made him walk her shrieking, sobbing self up to the front of the store to wait for her horrible sisters that let this unstable woman out and about on her own. She had a death grip on him and wouldn't let him leave until one of us arrived. Then we wouldn't have the decency to run her back home because of the trauma she'd been through, so we were absolute wretches. Whatever, your husband can come get your whiny self. He called to complain about watching the kids while she whined about us not running her home. Other sister and I vowed never again to take her out shopping. We still bring it up. It's funny now, but ugh. Story 15. When I was a child, me and my mother's boyfriend often got into fights. He was A and so was I. He was, however, very prone to bursts of anger if things didn't go his way. One time, when I was like 12 or something, things didn't go his way. I was supposed to do something, but since he was rude to me and I was a bratty little teen, I just didn't react and stayed in my room. He didn't like that, and so he thought that the only reasonable action to be taken was to storm into my room, grab me, carry me into the bathroom and hold my head under the turned-on shower head. 0-10. Would not recommend. Story 16. GF. I'm sorry I overslept and you didn't get to see me before you went into work. Me, it's fine you were tired. GF. No, it's not, I really wanted to see you. Me, you need your sleep. Just get hold of me when it's more convenient. GF. What do you mean convenient? Removes me from Facebook. Tells me to never text her again. Me scratching head. What the actual just happened? Update. She has begun talking to me again and apologized for what she said. Being the loathsome sloth that I am, I have accepted this apology. Also, if you hadn't read the comments, I've been with her for about a year now. Many details obviously left out, most of which may require eye bleach for some of us. Best not to go there. It seems the situation is being remedied nicely. Story 17. One time while getting ready for work, my wife asked me how I was feeling. I had been coughing that night. It took me a moment to say okay because I had a sore throat and had just had a drink of water. By the time I said okay, she was angry and told me I had a real problem with communicating and needed to figure myself out. Then she slammed the door on her way to work. Story 18. I worked at a family-owned store and got kind of fired. I had already put in my 2 weeks prior, so is it still a firing? The son of one of the owners has terrible anger issues and is a huge GA Tech fan. So, as a going-away joke, I said GA Tech sucks. His mother freaked out and told everyone but me that she was going to fire me for saying that about her son's favorite team. I was at lunch when she did this, but multiple people came to me and told me, when I went to clock back in, my time card was pulled, so I guess I got fired. Her son is 25, by the way, Adita word. Story 19. I was grounded for a month for petting our cat. There was nothing wrong with her, she was napping. So I pet her, then was immediately grounded by my stepdad for petting her and waking her up. Story 20. Good friend of mine was affected by this. Not my story, unfortunately. She lived in a share house. One of the guys who lives there has a nutbag of a girlfriend. She sees my friend's car parked there. She's lived there for over 6 months with the same car and does what any logical person would do. Assume her boyfriend is cheating. She got quite worked up about this. So worked up she lit the couch that's on the veranda on fire, which then spread through a nearby window and basically gutted the entire house and contents. Luckily no one was hurt and the loony lady is now being charged for arson and attempted murder. Story 21. I got a free mug that was ugly, but God I was happy for a week. I didn't need it and Eve still not used it and I was 19 when I got it. Not sure where all that joy came from. Edit spelling. Story 22. Once when I was 12 I wanted to taste the rice my mother was making. When she came back to the kitchen being the polite kid I was taught to be asked if she wanted to taste it too, she looked at me in horror as she realized I had opened the lid, and proceeded to scream at me and hit me with closed fists. My brother had to come and hold her so that I could get away and hide. It turns out that if you open the lid of the rice mid-cooking it might get ruined. Story 23. Okay, the crazy Patty story. I was dating this woman named Patricia who was an exchange student from Peru, very pretty, and had the legendary temper of women from that part of the world. Usually any flare-up only lasted a few seconds so it was manageable. We had stopped dating for all the usual reasons and I had moved on. A few months pass and a mutual friend was having a big party for the end of semester. I ran into Patricia on campus and she said, "You going to the party?" I made some non-committal answer and promptly forgot about it. The Saturday of the party rolled around and I had gone out with my current GF to a different party and we had rolled back to my place in the student ghetto to hit the sack. Sometime after midnight the phone rang and I foolishly answered it. It was Patricia. "Aren't you coming to the party?" No, I've had a long day and am already in bed." Had I been sober I would have heard, over the phone even, her nostrils flare and her blood pressure shoot up. So, who are you in bed with? So like I told her, woman from work Clara, I don't think you know her, then hung up. What happened next was related to me by several of my friends. First she slammed the phone down, then ripped it from the wall. She picked up the nearest handy object, a 1.5-liter bottle of red wine, and threw it across the room so it smashed against the brick fireplace. Then she ran out of the room and got in her car. Shortly thereafter I heard something on the front porch. My bedroom was the old living room and my windows were on that wall. I heard a tapping on the window and slid back the curtains. There was Patty, giving me the finger with both hands and calling me all sorts of names in both Spanish and English. For a finale she turned around, dropped true, and bent over shouting, "This is the last time you see this." With that I dropped the curtain back in place and turned on the bedside light. Clara was sitting up on one elbow when I turned around. She just shrugged and said, "I have a nicer." Story 24. Not me, but someone I know had his car stolen, and his new puppy was killed in the process. He killed everyone associated with what happened. Was a wild ride, escalated very quickly. Story 25. Cashier at retail grocery location. Company policy is to card everyone for alcohol regardless of how old they appear to be. I once carded a guy that looked 120. Everyone laughed and kinda poked fun at him and me, but most people understand that this is company policy. It'll make rare exceptions for people who are clearly old enough and are otherwise distracted or busy, so I don't slow things down. Guy comes up to the register with wine. He looks like he's in his 50s or 60s. It's early-ish morning and he's only buying a few things. In other words, his hands are free. I do the usual pleasantries. I ask to see his ID. He kinda stares at me like I'm stupid or he's surprised. He moves to get his wallet out, starts shaking his head. Really, he asks, kind of annoyed and seemingly flabbergasted by the request. I shrug and respond with my usual line, "It's company policy." Most people accept this even if they obviously think it's dumb. I'm 60 years old, I can't believe this. He's getting more agitated. Sorry, I have to ask. At this point I'm getting annoyed with the guy. He's getting upset because I'm asking to see his photo ID. I don't understand what the big deal is. He shakes his head and begrudgingly holds up his ID. I lean in to read the DOB and he suddenly snatches it away. You know what? No, this is ridiculous. He starts backing away. I have no idea what's happening. I am 60 years old. I shouldn't have to show my ID. He's yelling at me and everyone has turned and is staring at this guy, completely freak out at me. Then he stares at me for a response. It's early Saturday morning, this is at my second job. A line has formed at my register, and I'm tired, so I just shrug and say I don't make the rules in a flat. Clearly annoyed by his bullshit tone. I was doing my job and you're being a UGH. This ridiculous. I'm leaving. I can't believe this. At which time he storms out and doesn't pay for anything. I thought maybe that I was imagining or somehow made the situation worse. But the woman next in line who had witnessed the whole thing just went wow in a stunned voice. She said she hoped my day got better. During the next slow time the other cashier next to me was like, that guy was crazy. It wasn't just me. I've had people yell at me and act crazy, but this guy completely freaked out because I asked to see his photo ID. I'm still just like, WTF dude. Story 26. My first Christmas at my current job. A woman came in to pick up a gift for her grandson. It was his first Christmas and she was very excited. Well, she looks at the item and discovers we spelled his name wrong. Absolutely flips, her, standing there, yelling at us how we've ruined her grandson's first Christmas. We're trying to tell her that it's only a plate. It can be removed and redone within a couple minutes. Finally, she shuts up and lets us redo it, only to say that she was never coming back again. Just a few weeks ago, too, I had an older couple come in to pick up a photo album that was engraved. They claimed it was crooked. It wasn't. Got snotty when I offered to redo it for them, and when I showed them the test print, the wife said it was still crooked and she was disgusted. How charming her life must be that she's disgusted over something like that. Story 27. When I moved out on my own for the first time, I lived with my friend and her girlfriend. Once I moved in, it was about a month before my so came to live with us too. One morning my so wakes up and she asks me if she can have one of my friend's bagels with cream cheese, and I said sure, but you have to buy a pack to replace it, to which she had no issue. Fast forward 8 hours when I get home from work. I'm tired after a long day and I open up the cupboard to every single last item in the pantry labeled yes and no, or maybe in Sharpie on post-it notes. I slowly just kind of turned to the couch and saw my friend's girlfriend kind of go red and look away. So I said, what the is this about, and she was stupid enough to explain what yes, no, and maybe meant. I couldn't believe it. To top it off, less than 10 minutes after I got home in comes my so with cream cheese and a full pack of bagels. I obviously had some words with my friend about her girlfriend and her very poor attempt at passive aggression. We talked it out and it was fine, but I couldn't believe it. Story 28. My mom and I went through the drive-thru at Taco Bell. I was a kid, not sure how old, maybe 10 to 11 anyway. I asked for 3 soft tacos, no lettuce. We get the food and we're driving home. I open up a taco and it has lettuce on it. No big deal, I can pick it off. Mom didn't see it that way. She busts a U-turn in the middle of a busy street and hauls back to the Taco Bell. She tells me to stay in the car. I didn't and goes inside with the bag of food. When she gets to the counter, she goes, these tacos are supposed to be with no lettuce. What the does this look like to you? She took out a taco, unwrapped it, and threw it in the girl's face behind the counter, and walked out. So, thanks to my mother, that girl's day was ruined, and I had no tacos. From then on, when I wanted Taco Bell, we had to drive to the next town over to avoid that particular Taco Bell. Why? Because lettuce. Thanks, Mom. I was at a festival and saw out of the corner of my eye someone buying what I can only assume to be pills. Something wasn't right with the money, so the buyer stabbed the seller. Story 29. I think the biggest overreaction happened to me on New Year's Eve. Went out with the family. Some friends came down, was having a good time. I guess I looked at my stepmom weird because she freaked out on me, saying I have problems, blah blah blah. Why, I look at her with disgust. I have had no problems with her and had no ill thoughts toward her at all when this happened. Took me by surprise and not sure why she freaked out so bad. I had literally been joking around with her and whatnot 10 minutes before this freak out. Was really awkward and weird. Haven't spoken to her since and plan on keeping it that way for a while. Story 30x. Hey, can you clean the floor? Me sure, no prob. Grab Swiffer. Starts cleaning. XNO. Not like that Q tantrum verbal abuse. X wanted me to get on my hands and knees and scrub with a paper towel like her grandma in Korea does. Sorry. Your grandma would use a Swiffer if she had one. Story 31. This was at a Burger King. Me and my dad got done helping with insulation in a garage, so we decide to go get something to eat. We get our food, then comes a man and his kid. They order their food and he very specifically asked for no cheese on his burger. When the cashier calls his order, he sits down with his kid and takes a bite of his sandwich, spits it out, then goes up to the cashier and yells, "Didn't I make myself clear I didn't want cheese?" as he throws the sandwich at the cashier. His kid didn't even take a bite out of his burger before his father grabs his arm, and as he leaves says, "I knew I should have went to Taco Bell." Story 32. I had a friend who had some really strict parents who would ground him at the drop of a hat. His parents particularly hated video games for whatever reason. This friend graduated top 5 in our class and played sports, so he moderated his time fairly well. In middle school, his mother caught us playing Halo on the Xbox, and confiscated our friend's game, gave it back when he left. Probably the biggest overreaction was when I brought over the Pirates of the Caribbean game on the Xbox, and was telling him about it in the car as his mom drove us to their house. Well, his mom I guess got tired of us talking about this game, so she was just like, "Tim, you've been playing too many video games lately. Consider yourself grounded until further notice." I was like, yeah, that was going to be our afternoon, so I guess I'll just go home. Story 33. Saw someone freak out because she wanted a chicken quesadilla 3 minutes before they close, and they turned her down because they needed to clean the machine before they left. Woman threw an adult temper tantrum because they needed to call it a day and didn't have time to complete her request over quesadilla. On the plus side, my own chicken quesadilla popped out of the toaster oven in the middle of this meltdown. I may have rubbed in how much I was looking forward to eating my delicious quesadilla dinner a little more than I should have. Edit. In her defense, their quesadillas were really good. Story 34. TLDR. Woman completely lost her because my boss very politely stopped her from being able to lie to us. Longer version. I used to work at a Dollar Tree, where everything is literally a dollar. It was pretty common practice that if you accidentally scan something twice, you just didn't scan the next item because everything's a dollar, so it literally doesn't matter. At most it's a minor fib on inventory. Anyway, this woman comes in and asks to speak to my manager because she was accidentally charged twice for the same item. I'm thinking she was just here and maybe I missed her because she was at another register, so I ask if she still has the bag with her purchases so we can check against the receipt. She does not, because the receipt is from a week ago. I tell her I don't think there's much we can do if we can't verify it, but I call my manager anyway. My manager, who is about 52, says that if the woman wants to really press the issue, they can check the security footage. The woman sneers and says something like, "I don't need footage. I know I'm right, I have Jesus on my side." It's at this point that I know the situation will not go well, but I just keep checking out other customers while this happens. My manager says it's fine, she'll just check the footage herself, and discovers that the woman's cashier had accidentally scanned the same bag of chips twice and then left the subsequent item off the bill to compensate. You could even see him in the video pointing this out to the woman. Once she was told this, she went ballistic, was screaming at my boss, just nonsense interspersed with religious stuff. I've got the phone in one hand and I'm pointing at the door with the other and telling her to get out, but she's not hearing anything anymore. My boss walks over to my till, punches in her code, pops the drawer, and just thrusts $1 at this still screaming woman. She takes the dollar, immediately stops yelling, and just turns on her heel and leaves. All this over $1. Story 35. A friend called me from a drive-thru because he was mad that the person working said, "Welcome to restaurant. Would you like to try a featured menu item today?" I think his exact quote was, "Your job isn't to tell me what I want, it's for me to tell you what I want." I mean, seriously bro, have you ever been in a drive-thru where they didn't ask you if you'd like to try their featured menu item? Story 36. I made a salad and ate it straight from the large serving bowl instead of putting it into small bowls when eating it. We were the only two living there. He had a vein-popping explosion of violent anger. Story 37. There was this chick at a small coffee shop that ordered her usual Starbucks drink. She took it back to the guy that made it and complained that all the caramel sank to the bottom. He was confused and asked her to clarify. She angrily told him Starbucks can keep it on the top, then stated the monkeys there can make it stay on the top. How big of an idiot are you? He politely explained, "I'm very sorry miss, but it appears that caramel is denser than coffee so it sinks to the bottom." I don't know what they can do at Starbucks, but I certainly don't know how to change the laws of physics. She grabbed the drink and winged it over the counter, exploding on a chalkboard, then stomped out. I handed the guy a $20 tip and told him, "Just in case you didn't think it was worth it." I did. Story 38. I give explicit driving instructions to clients. Because stupid, part of the instruction was the biggest landmark near us is a big white Baptist church. Its sign is very big. The woman comes in later that day, panting like a dog, saying, "I couldn't find your office. Didn't you have the directions? I left them at my work, okay, sorry. And the church isn't white, as beige. She was a widow, and I am convinced through this and all other interactions I had with her husband died on purpose. One more, a guy called us for directions, then called us on the way 3 more times. He kept course correcting. Then he gets to the intersection where we are and we say we are right there, pull into the parking lot. An hour goes by and he calls us tearful and emotional, has had a fender bender somewhere a half mile down from us and he is giving up and going home.